Ladies and gentlemen, we would like to begin the Art and Creative Session, Future of Art in the City. I would now like to introduce the speakers for the session. Artist, Mr. Carsten Nicolai. Rhizomatiks, Creative and Technical Director, Mr. Seiichi Saito. Dean of the Penny W. Stamps of Art and Design at University of Michigan, Professor Gunalan Nadarajan. And the moderator is Director of Rujak Center for Urban Studies, Dr. Kusmawijaya. So please.
Minasama konnichiwa.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen.
This afternoon session, so I could at least speak the only words I know in Japanese, which is konnichiwa. The next session, the future of art in the city, again will bring us back to talks by two artists and one art critic, art historian. But before that, I would like to start by recalling what Mr. Dominique Perrault said yesterday. He reminded us that since Tokyo already have all or most of the facilities for the Olympics, its real challenge is not about changing the physical reality of the city, but its urban mentality. Also, how the inhabitants can enjoy the city differently. I don't know how many of you remember these words from yesterday. Would you help me by showing up your hands if some of you remember what he said? I see there are only a few, so if I may ask your help to explain to your neighbors in 2 minutes what Mr. Perrault meant yesterday. Please do explain to your neighbors what he said yesterday. I think because it is important about this. 1 minute, if not 2 minutes. Or your neighbor can ask you. Can you raise again your hands, those who have remembered this? See, ask them. Or you can ask Mr. Fuchi in front here. Okay, the reason I asked that question, or I reminded that, is because it is exactly what we are going to hear today in this session, the presentation by two artists and also by one critic who will also talk about many possibilities that will be possible in not really changing the physicality of the city, but how we perceive the cities, how we experience the cities, and of course also how we interact with the city. Art in the city, of course, is not always public arts, but a major part of art in the city, you can say, is public arts, meaning arts in the public space. But already the previous session brought up the problematic about the relationship between the public and the freedom of art. I think, again, in this session, we will have to address that issue because many arts will take place in public space, and what is the public, what is the spectators, what are the differences between audience and publics, and how we resolve the problems of art in the public, as mentioned before by the gentleman behind about the confrontation or the negotiation between art and public standards or public norms. The two artists will give us a peek about the future possibilities, while the last speaker, Mr. Gunalan, will give even a broader perspective about many other works in the world. And I'm sure because he is a critic, he will also raise some critical questions. Our first speaker, Nicolai Carsten, is based in Berlin. He believes in the transgression of different forms of art, so his works will be about integration of different forms or genre of art. And he also mentioned yesterday he will ask the question what the public is. Please welcome Carsten Nicolai.
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure for me to speak here today in this kind of context. And I would like to ask the audience to take their mobile phones because I would like to have a little, in the end of my speech, I would like to do something with the audience together. And there is the App Store, or for the Androids, there's an App Store too, I think, and look for an application called Alpha Pulse. So this you can do a little bit during I speak, just remember the letters, and I will come back to this later on. Alpha Pulse, okay. So before I start talking a little bit towards the city, I would like to talk a little bit, or to make a little bit better understanding where my work comes from and what is the idea behind this. So many people ask me where is my basically inspiration coming from, and I would say the main inspiration for me is nature, of course, and I have a few shots here of exhibitions I did in the past. You see here monocrystal. So the crystal is a very important aspect of me, not only because of it's let's say it's a very interesting atomic structure. This monocrystal has a very uniform, very grid order. As well, the crystal is a metaphor for me. The crystal is a metaphor for me in terms of growing, how we grow. And a crystal starts growing on a particle, on something like a dust or something, irritation. Let's call it an error. And these crystals grow in a way, for instance, snow crystals, grow following a certain principle. They all have 6 corners. But each crystal is completely individual. There's not one crystal looks like the same. So I'm very interested in basically principles who can, principles who can basically define something, can define maybe a common ground, but in the same time they leave space for individual situation. So they have the option that we all can create something what is unique. And this kind of combination of, let's say, a principle or, let's say, a rule, and then as well the possibility to be playful, but to be individual inside that rule, I think this is a very important situation for me. So there are other aspects what are really interesting for me is, of course, geometry and mathematics. Here you see a rhomboid. This rhomboid is accessible, but in the same time, there are sound components in this rhomboid. So I, as well, interested in things we see and things we don't see. But basically, we have problems to perceive. I make an example. Our ear is possible only to hear from, let's say, 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz. That's depending on the age. But animals, our living creatures, have different frequency ranges. And in order to expand, to make sound maybe perceptible or enjoyable or visible, I'm very interested in basically the idea of visualization, or in basically making that we can understand different invisible processes who we not necessarily have senses for. Of course, mathematics is an important situation as well. Here, geometry, as I was saying, it's for me, it's a kind of metaphor. There's always the big question: is mathematics existing really? Is it implemented in nature, or is it basically an abstraction of something what we're thinking is in nature? So this is as well for me an interesting model, because as artists we're working on very individual ideas how the world is constructed. We basically proposing very individual concepts and ideas. Each artist is very different, but as well I think that the expanding the idea how the nature is constructed, how we are surrounded, that there are existing abstract languages who are not necessarily implemented in nature. So for me as well, it's important, specifically electromagnetic waves, wave frequencies. So I not only talk about sound. In this case, you see some images where I'm working with very low frequencies on liquids, visualizing basically super low frequencies, what we cannot hear, but we can see a sound piece in this range. We can see in the back photographs of ultra low frequencies, they're arranging liquid shapes. Another aspect is the image and the imaginary. So when we're dealing with art, we're creating, of course, a lot of images. And as well, we have this opportunity with these images to imagine things. So the imaginary is a very important aspect. So there are works who basically just create an image, but as well they have references. They can create a story. Here's a work called Anti, what refers to a very old shape of Albrecht Dürer, what was very strongly discussed as a geometrical object in the Renaissance. Or there are tubes where I store sound, basically like in a bottle, basically sound bottle messages. Or I flip TVs, so the image is kind of not recognizable, but we imagine the images. So what I'm interested is visualization. Visualization in this way that I can basically visualize something that we are not necessarily can sense. For instance, magnetic fields. Magnetic fields speakers are basically producing magnetic fields. We're surrounded by magnetic fields. Our body itself is a magnetic field. So in order to understand what is going on, I think visualizers can be a very important tool. So in my work, I'm working as well on this kind of principle of visualizing. Or I use our principles here. You have a cloud chamber where basically can see radiation, what is of course very essential for our living, but we have no real, let's say, opportunity to see it as humans. But we have to think about devices who can make us visible, principles of nature who are really essential for our living. Data visualization is another aspect, of course. Here is another sculpture, what in the first moment looks like a normal art piece. So I'm moving slowly from the individual concept to the city now. This sculpture looks like it's a kind of mural sculpture, but at the same time, this is situated on a public square. At the same time, this sculpture is a kind of sensor. So when it's getting dark, this kind of sculpture can become translucent because there's a light inside. The glass is half transparent. You see the structure of it. And depending on the communication frequencies like mobile telephones, CB funk, all the frequencies, the sculptures have different intensity of light inside. So you can go with your mobile phone to the sculpture and make the sculpture transparent. It's not reflecting automatically anymore the surrounding. It starts to interact with transparency, but as well with the people. And this is an aspect what I really think it's specifically for this forum very interesting, that public spaces today is very difficult because a lot of these public spaces are, people have sometimes not the feeling anymore that they're owning that spaces, that basically we have to give these public spaces back to the people, to everybody, to us in a way. So I would like as well to with art, for instance, with a playful situation where you basically can interact, where you can modify a sculpture on a public square. I think you have a little bit more freedom back, winning a little bit of freedom back, because specifically in dense environments, we losing a lot of public space because of regulations. So as artistry, of course, fighting always with the situation that the regulations and of public art sometimes is for us very, very difficult. This, for instance, was this was a piece in Berlin, in Potsdamer Platz, where basically the traffic, a camera was capturing all the traffic on the crossing, and the building itself modified according to the traffic. If there was a lot of traffic, the facade was very active. If there's very little action, you could basically, as a single user crossing cross the street and make the building illuminate. So this is something that I think is very interesting in terms of public. Another piece what I made, I not want to talk about this too much, but I'm very interested as well in the idea of the combination of space, light, and sound. This kind of three main elements, and of course architectural elements are integrated in this too. Aaron Mystics I was mentioning before, but as well autobasis processes. This is for me a very important thing. When I'm designing, for instance, a facade for a building, in this case, then I'm not so interested in the result, in the final result to show something of my artwork. I'm actually would like to define a principle where the people have the possibility to define as well the facade. In this case, it was a very analog, let's say, not very digital situation. I was invited to have a temporary art space in Berlin, in the middle of Berlin. And they gave me the whole facade, yeah. So people had stickers and they could come and modify this facade. So you can see there have been thousands and thousands of stickers, and people start modifying this whole facade and sticking and being creative. And it was an incredible successful project because people really winning back as well in the middle of the city, in the middle of Berlin, next to the TV tower, next to the museums island, space back where people start become really creative. Like the only principle I designed is use the stickers. And that made this basically a kind of living organisms. So I skipped this work. There is a whole bunch of works where I'm very interested in perception, how we perceive things, how we perceive light, color, how we perceive semiotics of science. This is an installation I did in Japan a few months ago. And just let me skip here. would like to come to something what is very important for me as well for specific work. It's called biofeedback, or it's basically a pulsing light source. I created a work. I will show a little video here. It's called alpha pulse. Alpha pulse refers to alpha waves. So this, what you saw, basically was an installation utilizing one of the highest buildings in Hong Kong. It's the highest building, actually. It's almost 500 meters high. And you can see it's the ICC Tower in London, in Hong Kong, and using basically the cityscape as a screen, like basically visualizing the sound. There was two parts. There was one part, basically the tower itself pulsing, stimulating brain waves on alpha waves with a kind of bio feedback idea behind that. But as well, for the opening was this performance. That's what the images what you saw were additional screens being installed, and I performed together with the tower, creating an environment where people can as well interact. And the interaction was basically that people had mobile phone applications, and they could basically scan the tower or one of the towers, for instance, on this rooftop of one of the piers, and become with the mobile phone, with more or less with the mobile device, a part of the screen. And you can see this in this second movie a little bit better. There, first of all, the cityscape, the situation of Hong Kong is quite unique, so it's a very site-specific work. This was the opening event. This was more or less the performative. Here you see a mobile phone scanning the tower and synchronizing to the light sources. So people could basically use their mobile phones. Yeah. So I would like to do a little experiment with you together. Maybe in the meantime you could download this application. And what I would like to do with you together now is, I hope some people did it, just open the application if you have it. And when you open the application, you can see a sync button. I can show this here. And you just point the sync button basically on the bar. And it will take a little bit of time, and your phone will synchronize to it. This is double speed now. But if a bunch of people do this, or maybe the whole room, or maybe a city, or something like that, I think this can create a situation where people participate, where people can basically play together, be active, get involved on a very, very simple, basic level. Yeah. So we have a little music piece now running here, and it's very nice as well because of course it will shift. But imagine like 100 people do this, or like a small group of people. You can change sounds in this application. You can change speed. So it becomes a kind of very playful. Yeah, nice. I have a little piece here. Okay, I quick in the end. I'm kind of end of my talk about my work, but I would like to. Say something as well, how to integrate art in the city. I come from Berlin, and for me, a very important aspect we heard yesterday about architects, about basically the metropole, then the megapolis. And I think as well what we yesterday heard was a kind of micropolis, like the micropolis defining basically the metropole. So for me, the aspect of grow is very important, to grow things, works. And I would like to, there is actually a very good example sorry, skip out. There's a very good example of, just let me go back. There's a very good example of a building very close from here, from the Metabolist time. Actually, this is a building, the capsule hotel was supposed to grow. People could add things, shrink. So the idea of concept is something you have already in Tokyo. There's this building, I think it's a very incredible, important building, and in the moment there's a question if it goes down or not. I hope this is going to be kept, because this is a kind of strong architectural icon for all of us. It's just maybe 10 minutes walkway from here. I took these photos yesterday. And just to explain a little the process of growth, what is basically an architectural urban concept developed after World War II, but it's already implemented in any kind of older city. We in Berlin started with a very simple idea. Basically, it was a few people from the authority of the city who basically gave space to artists with an interim solution. So basically, spaces who are maybe going down, maybe going to transfer, maybe have a break. They're not basically this period when people moved out and until it maybe got demolished, they gave this kind of spaces to artists. And this created basically a very intense situation. Sometimes this period was years. And the artists established themselves inside the city, sometimes in the middle of the city, sometimes in the center. And I think I want to end this now. I'm running late. But I would like to leave the message, if you want to integrate art on a substantial level in the city, you have to give the artist space, what is not necessarily commercial used, and you have to understand as well that the art itself is not necessarily a product but can be sold or can be commercialized in the first way. So I would like to leave you with this and I say thank you.
Thank you, Carsten. I hope you started already imagine Tokyo in very different ways because of this. I asked previously the question about how we can perceive cities differently with arts in public spaces and art using the surfaces of the city. But now I wonder whether we should also ask the second question, can architects or urban planners change their way of planning or their way of designing buildings and cities differently by incorporating this very different way of looking at cities or using the cities and their surfaces. Anyway, our next speaker, Seiichi Saito, is a leader of a group called Rhizomatiks. They are very immersed in the contemporary urban life, while Mr. Carsten is a little bit quiet and silent, although with some music in his works. We will hear a lot more sounds with the works of Mr. Seiichi Saito. Welcome, Mr. Seiichi Saito.
Konnichiwa. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Saito from Rhizomatiks.
In Japanese.
I'd like to speak in Japanese. A future of art in the cities is what we're discussing. And we have a group called Rhizomatiks. It's a team. And I'd like to do a brief self-introduction. And I'd like to refer to what I've created, commercial works or artworks. I'd like to mix all of these. And going forward, as a Japanese, as one who has an office in Tokyo, 2020 is I think will be a major trigger for us. And in this process, using cities to express ourselves, we'd like to bear this in mind, or if you could bear this in mind as you look at what I have to present. I'd like to briefly explain about myself. I was originally a student of architecture, and I went to Columbia as well as Tokyo University of Science and Technology. And then I worked for an architect's firm, and then I went to an advertising agency because of 9/11. There were fewer and fewer architecture projects, so I moved to an advertising agency. The world of advertising and world of architecture is very, very different. And so there were lots of things that I learned, and the way I perceived architecture changed as a result of my experience. And then as an artist, I have participated in the Biennale and Denver Art Festival and so forth. Through art and through media art, in my case, I found it hard to earn a living. I think you find a lot of this among artists, creating artwork and making money. You try to make both possible, but in my case, I had a different name as an artist, and I had a different name as a one making money. And that did not sit well with me. So I was a freelance designer, and I continued creating artwork at the same time. And in the end, I created Rhizomatiks. Rhizomatiks comprises not only myself, Daito Manabe is my partner, who's a media artist who is very active. And our company is such that we work in the context of media art, what we want to create. And according to what Mr. Nanjo said, we create things that are not useful, that cannot be used. And we would use technology and methods, and we would use that in a commercial and make money. And then we would recycle that once again. And this is our studio. As you can see, we have a lot of gadgets and equipment. It's a dream world for us. One of the reasons I created my company is because I wanted to create an environment where I can create the things I want to at the time I want to create. There are projectors on the right hand, and there's a drone on the right hand side, a model mock-up of a helicopter, and then 2-kilometer cables, and lots of things in my studio. So whenever I want to create something, whether it's a commercial project or art projects, I can create whatever I want to at any time. And so that's the kind of environment that I created. And so that's one of the distinguishing features of Rhizomatiks. Basically, in my company, we have this makeup in terms of the team. We have artists and programmers and coders. Programs multiplied by the number of people comprise half of our staff. We do soldering, and we create our own devices. Rhizomatiks itself has a head count of 31, and we have a project management team that organizes our people. We cut down trees. I'm dressed well today, but I always have dirt in under my nails, and that's the kind of work that I do, and that's what my work requires me to do. We cut steel, or we cut trees, and recently fabrication is a very fashionable word. It's become a more common term. And so we create things by ourselves. At the bottom, we have documentation. So whatever we create, we document through images, video, and we stream that on the YouTube. And through this, we promote ourselves. So that's we don't have a marketing arm or marketing team in our group. If I continue along these lines, I think you'll become sleepy. So I'd like to show you some video and what emerges out of the video in terms of messages I'd like to refer to as I explain about my work. I'd like to interject the following. As you can see, people and robots are dancing together here. We wondered if that was possible. And we did this together with the Yamaguchi Prefecture Information Technology Center. It's an experimental project. And what I always bear in mind is that the concept and idea, the relationship between this is to be taken for granted, but what we want to make and what we can make. Robots were not created to dance to start out with, but robots, companies creating robots, in this case it was Epson that manufactured this robot, And we were talking about what the robots were capable of doing, and the programming team at our company used different programs to make the robots do what comes close to what human beings do. And so we have things that we want to do, and then we use technology to make that happen. It's the same with cities. You have to first have a vision, and then technology follows and infrastructure follows. So both are important. So first you have to have a vision as to what you want to create. It may not be a vision, or what should we call it? You set a target, and you have to have this target. Otherwise, technology will not catch up. Technology looks like it's evolving automatically, but the equipment that I use on the ground is not that way. We want to do something, and that's why we learn programs to enable us to do that. Or we want to do something, and we decide to develop something new. And so this is the way it works. So having a vision and what we want to create and what we do create, both are important. Moving on to the next, sorry. As you can see, this is the Nebuta Festival in Aomori Prefecture. The Nebuta Festival has a long tradition, so we try to introduce technology into that to try something new. I had some resistance to doing this, but I talked to the locals, and we discussed that culture needs to evolve. So we discussed, and we came up with this. And what we're doing here is festivals. We have festivals or matsuri in Japan, and it's a wonderful concept where everyone participates. The Nebuta Festival has always been done in Aomori, so it's far for a lot of people, and not everyone can participate. So if you go to the website, we could get images of different people's faces, and then we would convert that to the faces of the figures of the Nebuta lanterns, and people can see their own faces projected or on the figures, lanterns of Nebuta Festival. And so this is the point I wish to make. This is something where everyone can participate, participatable. And this to create a platform on which everyone can participate. I mentioned hack, the word hack earlier, and connect. These are key words. But digital technology is such that this is the strong point of digital technology, and I think we can leverage that kind of technology to do this. And the next work. I'd like to explain as you look at this. In the beginning of this year, Arata Isozaki exhibited this at ICC. It's a Solaris exhibition. The reason I quit architecture was that the architecture inevitably cannot provide the answer to what is immediately necessary. The architectural process is such that you think and then you negotiate, and then politics is involved, money and law is involved, and after that, finally, your work takes form. And it may take 10 years. The MacArthur Street in front of this Toronto building took several decades. So the form of architecture and what we are thinking, I wanted to create a direct linkage, direct tie. That is, we have know-how, or brainwaves that we take, and then the brainwaves and the blood pulse. We took that, and we immediately gave it form. On the right-hand side, it looks like a garbage dump, but this is the mock city which Mr. Isazaki makes in China, and we would inject forms into this, and that's an experiment that we did. And here, what we wanted to say was this: immediate response. And I was talking to the architects, and the architects think about this kind of technology, I understand. Digital technology is very good at doing this too. It doesn't have to be digital, but the speed of architecture is accelerating. But the immediate response, what is capable of providing immediate response, and the city building where immediate response is possible, I think this would be something for the city of the future, which is the theme of this discussion. So data visualization makes something like this possible. The significance of data rising, I think people are asking this question in different places. The next is a website. It's an open METI project. METI's, or Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industries, data has been uploaded so that everyone can use what METI had as data. And there are lots of books on trade in the library of METI, and we digitalized this, and we created a database. And what I want to say here is the following. In our industry, we talk about SDK or API to make things open. And there are different information that people have. Tokyo Metro publicizes information on the running of the trains. And by everyone making data information public, things I believe will change. By 2020, there's a lot of things we can do. We can do the things things that I showed you, and discussion has taken place yesterday and today. Streamlining the laws is very important. Mr. Carsten's work cannot be exhibited in Japan, so the laws need to be organized and improved. We can make life-size robots like this. I think we installed this in Kichijoji, and there was quite a commotion about this. So the laws need to be improved, and the regulations as well. We hope that we will move forward with this by 2020. And then the rest is, well, the Olympic Games coming up, I hope would be the kind of Olympic Games where the entirety of Tokyo would be involved. So we hope things will be improved. For example, technology that connects people can be tapped and harnessed, and so that everyone, there'll be a surge of excitement, a mounting excitement, so that as a city we can all become one. And we hope that we can do something to make this possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Saito-san. What I like about both Mr. Nicolai and Saito-san's use of technology is it makes us feel that we have the control over the city, that we can control and perhaps we can own the city again. Because this is very important, because in many metropoles, the talk is always about how the metropoles alienated human beings. We feel we have no control. We we don't belong to the city, or we cannot control what happens in the city, but the use of this technology shows that how we can at least feel that we can play with the city, we can own the city, we can even control the city. And the second thing I want to say about this is that the title of this session is The Future of Art in the City. But I think what they have shown us also, actually art are showing us the future of city. And I think that's a very important question when we are heading towards the next couple of decades. Mr. Gunalan has been introduced before. We hope he will speak more about many other cases about arts in public spaces in the city, with or without technology in many other parts of the world. Please welcome Mr. Gunalan again.
Thank you, Marco. Thank you, Nanjo-san, again for the invitation to speak here. And I must say that I'm really humbled and excited by the fact that I'm following Carsten and Seiichi's talks, mostly because a lot of what they said resonates with me and some of the things that I'm going to try and capture here. But mostly also because I think that they, both of them represent very exciting and interesting trends within the arts that I think needs to be encouraged and needs to take root in the city much more. So my talk is called Softening the City. And really this resonates quite a bit with some of the themes that both Carsten and Seiichi brought up in their talks. The idea of hacking the city, the idea of hacking and transforming and changing the codes and the programs of the city is very integral to both their talks and the kind of work that they were doing and they were showing. The idea of empowering people to take control and participate, and by participation, take control away from the city that imposes a control on you and find ways to make the city your own is part and parcel of what they are talking about. Now, I do think that the future of art in the city is, as Marco noted, inevitably going to be tied up with the future of the city. And I think that there are some exciting trends and some exciting areas that are going on. I'm not going to be able to capture all of that in the next 20 minutes. What I'm going to try and do is to give you a snapshot of some interesting things that I think are happening and that you might want to keep in mind as you are thinking about what your city would be in the future and what we as a collective are going to be thinking about when we think about the city as a whole. So, next slide, please. So the notion of the idea of softening the city comes, at least for me, it comes from the novel by Jonathan Reban from 1974, 40 years ago. It's a novel where it's basically a novel about an individual and how he manages and navigates the city in different ways. And Reban talks about the idea that the city is not just the hard and fast and programmed and urban planned grids and buildings, but it is also, and more fundamentally, what we make of it and how we navigate it. The memories, the mysteries, the way in which we manage it, the way we navigate it, all of this are what softens the city. And so I want to take that idea of soft and the soft city and talk a bit about how media arts especially, because of the way in which media arts operates and the way in which it affords a particular kind of reprogramming, hacking, by participation changing the city, allows us to soften the city differently. Next slide, please. So both Seiichi's talk and Carsten's talk referred to and used examples of the city facades. Now, I want to go through a kind of change that I'm seeing in architecture. A lot of architecture used to have screens and media on the buildings themselves. But increasingly, the buildings themselves are becoming screens. The buildings themselves are becoming the media on which things are programmed and things are shown. And I want to show a few examples of this trend. Next slide, please. So this is Times Square, 1930. The next slide. This is Times Square, 1960. Note, there are still no TV screens. All you have so far are just posters. Next slide. Well, the first inkling of something that looks like lighted neon signs and things like that, 1980. Some signs that are a little more vibrant, but they are still not screens as such. Next slide, please. This is Times Square today, 2012. There has been a proliferation, and you could take any city today, and many cities reflect this increasing mediatization of the facades of buildings. It affords a very different kind of relationship with the buildings themselves. It allows us to think about the buildings not as the hard and fast things that they are, but somehow give you the fiction that they are much more manipulable. They are far more interesting than they actually end up being. This trend is not just in Times Square or Shibuya, but many other places. Next slide, please. This is Wuxi Tower in Wuxi, China. Again, screens. Next slide, please. This is the Galleria in Cheonan, South Korea. Again, LED screens for the facade. Next slide, please. Flame towers in Baku in Azerbaijan. Next slide, please. Capitol Gate in Abu Dhabi. Now, I want to, the next slide, and I want to play a video of an artist, Seon Jin, who works on the Seoul Square in Seoul Square Garden in Seoul. So this is one of her works. As you can see, the idea is very similar to some of the things that Seiichi showed, and some of the works that were referred to yesterday and day before yesterday. The idea of screens becoming far more integrated into buildings allows us to do something much more public and much more, gives you the sense that the building is much more malleable and programmable. Yeah, you can end the video and move to the next one. Next slide. Now, the idea of managing the city or navigating the city differently or hacking the city is really interestingly played out in the idea of games. Increasingly, artists and gamers have been inhabiting and moving into the city itself. The city itself becomes the playground where games are played. So I want to show you some examples of the development of games in the cities themselves. Next slide, please. So this is an early alternate reality game that was developed for New York City. And interestingly, this is a game, the Node Runner game in New York City was basically focused on teams of people going to different parts of New York, and their task is to identify and reach particular wireless spots. As soon as they reach those wireless spots, they have reached one target, and then they carry on to collect number of nodes. Now, this is 2002, right, where the notion of wireless and wireless integration into cities was itself a novelty. And it's not surprising that the game was structured around how players would collect and win the nodes, the wireless nodes themselves as part of the game. Next slide. This is a game by an alternate reality game created by Blast Theory, which is a media collective group from England. Could you play the video? So the game is I Like Frank. It was played in Adelaide.
I Like Frank in Adelaide is an adventure game played simultaneously online and on the street. Street players are given a mobile phone to find Frank somewhere in the centre of Adelaide.
So
their phone shows
the idea is Frank, like the Where's Wally game, right? So it's about finding a person, this individual, in the city, and you get clues, and you are talking to people to find out where this could be. You are given continuously. You send clues on your mobile phone to give you a sense of where this could be. But it also becomes a way of understanding the city, navigating the city. So you navigate the city by way of a virtual map of the city that is available to you online, on your mobile phone.
The objects were specially produced postcards.
You can increase the sound.
These were hidden in a bar, at a pool hall, and on bicycles.
Okay, this is another game by Blast Theory. This is a slightly different game. So what the objective is, mind you, this is 2008. The objective is to 3 players are carrying cameras that are connected real time, and their task is to identify and discover each other. So it's a hide and seek game where the 3 players are trying to avoid each other in the city, and they can do whatever they need to in order to discover the other person. So if you can play the video, you will see how it is played. Yeah, the video there, the first video. Yeah, you can play that.
Hiya. See you guys.
Welcome to I'd Hide You. I'd Hide You is an online game. 3 runners stream live video in high definition from the streets of Manchester. Online players enter their name and pick a runner from one of the 3 teams to ride with.
My strategy for playing is going to be stealthy as possible and going to be quiet and fast.
Pick a runner to follow. Watch their video, and if you spot another runner in the shot, click to take a snap. But this is more than just a game. This is a live transmission.
You are logging on, and you are becoming part. You are playing through that game, playing the game through that person who is carrying the camera. Again, it connects the online environment with the actual city. It forces people the players to also use the resources that are available in the city, whether it's maps or other people where they have them. So there are people who stop in the streets and ask people on the street, did you see this person carrying a camera? And they say, well, the person is over there. Go run there, and you can find the person there. See? See?
Any ideas about where anyone is would be helpful.
I think he's trapped me now. How do I deal with this situation?
I might just go sit on this bench for a minute, to be honest. Do you mind if I sit here?
Yeah, come on.
Is that okay?
Yeah, what are you doing, guys?
I'm playing a game. What are you doing?
Go to one of the art forms. Geisha's dance. Yes, we've got ourselves a sexy dance. I'm gonna hide, I think, or try and hide. I need to do my shoelace up. This is a disaster. You do my shoelace up.
So I'm going to move on, show you a few other things. Next slide, please. Many of you are familiar with the idea of augmented reality, where virtual objects are placed in real environments and real objects are placed in virtual environments. What this represents is a possibility of actually playing games and creating interactions with real environments in ways that was never possible before. And artists have been using it to think of how they could actually navigate and think about the city differently. So I'll show you some examples. Next one, next slide. This is part of a festival, a digital art week that was held in Singapore very recently. So all the containers you see are virtual objects in a real environment, but you see those virtual objects when you are using your mobile phone. The virtual objects appear to you because they are embedded in that location. Next slide, please. So this is a work by Tomiko Thiel, who is one of the most well-known virtual reality public art artists. She does a lot of public artworks where they don't actually exist in the real environment. They only exist virtually, but they are embedded in those locations, and you can find them when you go to the sites themselves. So next slide, please. This is an artist from Chinese artists. This is a tail. Butterfly Lovers is a tail that is embedded in this environment. And in fact, it's a full-length story that is unfolding within this park and different parts of Hong Kong. Next slide, please. This is, as you can see, they are in St. Marco Square, but the artists have embedded the China Pavilion during the 54th Venice Biennale. So the principle behind really this is that how can you create another layer of reality in an environment that you don't have control over, that is fixed, that is hard and fast, but how can you soften it? How can you hack it? How can you change it? And that's what they have done, these artists have done. The next slide, please. I want to just play a more recent alternate reality game, mobile games. If you could play the video.
What was the net effect of the Niantic project? We had crossed a threshold in which global security could be at risk. Decrypting the data was the mistake.
This is not psychosis.
So it's set like a game, and you are playing it as if it's you are playing it in a real environment, but it's a full-fledged game that you are playing in the real environment using your mobile phone. All the clues are sent to you remotely. You are seeing virtual objects in the environment.
The mission of 13 Magnus is to monitor the effects of mind hacking. Obviously, this will be done with the highest of security to make sure that the ideas do not contaminate or threaten humanity.
This all leads to Niantic.
I know that many tools will be needed to fight this battle.
You just have to know where to look and know what you're seeing.
Portals emit exotic matter into our world, and that matter has certain effects on our world.
I started noticing that there were energy fields, anomalies on Earth all around me.
A few of them exhibit properties that are as yet unexplained.
I know that there are others out there.
What if they're already among us, but we don't realize it?
And I must be prepared to work with them or fight them. They are coming. Something's wrong out there in the world. This doesn't feel like a sign.
Thank you. Next slide. So another interesting development I find that I thought I'll share with you is the idea of wearable technologies and how they become ways of empowering people to navigate cities and deal with the city differently. So I want to show you some slides, some works. This is a design project by Frog Design, a very prominent design company. It's called Airwaves Mask. As many of you know, the pollution is a huge problem in China. And what they developed was a networked mask, which is networked through the mobile phones. So the masks, everyone who wears a mask is actually by way of, they become a sentinel. Basically, they record by way of where they are. They are recording through their mask the pollution levels, and then that is in real time networked, and that gives you a sense of where in the city the pollutions are higher or lower. And people who are locked onto this and are using this mask are able to then navigate different parts of the city better. So it has a real life a kind of impact about it. This is still in a prototyping stage. From what I understand, they have not implemented it yet, but it's a fascinating idea of how you can be empowered to deal with something that is so abstract and so far, something that it feels like you cannot control, but you might be able to navigate differently. The next slide, please. This is a work by an artist called BioCircuit. Basically, it's a wearable costume that is connected, is recording her heart rhythms, and her heart rhythms are connected in a real time, connected to music or sound that is playing in relation to where she is. So it could be a variety of sounds or a variety of musical compositions that are related to where she is and how her heart reacts to that space. So if we play the video, it'll become clear to people. That's a heartbeat. So those are the speakers that you are seeing right now. So depending on how relaxed she is, or where she is and how relaxed or anxious she is, the sounds play out or play down. So do you notice how she's suddenly in the city and she's having a faster heartbeat? She's walking faster. You get the point. Thank you. I want to make sure that I finish early so that we can have discussion. Google Glasses, I mean, there's already a set of protocols and etiquette about how you wear Google Glasses. There are many, in fact, Christophe, it's in France, isn't it, that they are trying to stop people from getting into restaurants with Google Glasses. Well, anyway, it's, there are people who are trying to control who wears it and where you can wear it. But I think that this would also open up a lot of interesting possibilities for how you can hack and deal with the city differently. So I see it as an interesting urban tool that would be used in the future. It's already being used by some artists, but a lot of them are still not so interesting for me to share with you yet. So but hopefully you will see some interesting works coming out soon. Next slide, please. I wanted to share very quickly with some ideas around drones. Drones are increasingly being used by artists because they have become part of the technological environment we inhabit. It's interesting, Seiichi showed that in his studio he has drones, because drones are being used both for modeling as well as capturing information, mapping, but therefore they can also be used by artists and designers as a tool to hack the system, to hack it differently. So next slide. This is a work by James Bridle called Dronestagram. Basically, he uses Instagram to hack into images from the sites that are being bombed by drones by the US Army, and he broadcasts them before and after. Next slide. This is a work by a collective of artists from US and Pakistan. It's called Not a Bug Splat, meaning that it is a very large printed image of a child, a typical child in one of these villages in Pakistan. And the idea is that, look, you know, those drones that are flying, when you see this, you will understand that this is not just some village or where there are terrorists, but also kids who are there. So it's a way of trying to use an image, a real image of a person, to actually get the drone to become a bit more sensitive to where it is targeting its bombs. The next slide. These are selfies, a series of selfies made by drones themselves. There are quite a number of selfies. But again, if we are making selfies, why would drones not make them also? So these are a series of selfies by a group called Ayakos, an Italian group called Ayakos. And it's very cheekily called In Times of Peace. So when the drones are not going out and killing people, so what do? They occupy themselves with selfies. Next slide. This is a pretty recent project by two photographers. They basically created a series of drone photographs of Baltimore, the city they lived in. Carry on. Next slide. This is a project where they were using drones in Hong Kong to map and model the entire building. So the image that you see on your left is a model that was created by the drone. Next slide. This is a work by a British artist, Liam Young. What it actually is the drone is flying through actual spaces in the city, but it is mapped on your console or your game console as a game environment. So the real place is actually mapped as a game environment which you play. Next slide. This is a drone graffiti paintings created by Katsu, a graffiti artist. So he basically has drones going out and painting graffiti, and it's an interesting work, and many of the paintings get sold in galleries actually. Next slide. I wanted to do talk a bit about smells and the city. You know, if you look at urban planning, the next slide, if you look at urban planning and cities are structured around sight, what you can see and how the city becomes visible to you. And very rarely are they thinking about sound, and that's why we live in cities that are very bad in terms of sound pollution and noise pollution, and it practically does not take into account smells. In fact, smells are seen as things that you must remove from the city and keep away from the city, rather than embracing it and seeing how you can manage it differently in urban planning environments. So an artist, next slide, Cecil Tolas did a series of works around mapping the city based on smells. So this is her work where she mapped Berlin city around smells. She went around the whole of Berlin, and she broke it down into four cardinal points: north, east, west, and south. And she developed for each one of them. Next slide. She developed smells. She captured smells that are that are based on abstracting the smells and then composing it. She worked with a perfumer to create the smells themselves. Next slide. This is her perfume that was created from the Berlin smell research. But again, it's the idea that you can actually map the city and think about the city by another means. Opens up a new way of thinking about it. Next slide. I wanted to end off with this simply because, you know, I don't know about you guys, but I've been concerned about all that is happening in Hong Kong now. And I wanted to have the last slide talk a bit about what young people, the activists, the protesters are doing, empowering themselves in a city that has become so hostile to them. Next slide. So this is a work called Stand By You, and it's really a way by which you can actually send supportive messages to the protesters out there. And it is brought. It is put up on different parts of the city to tell people that you are not alone. And I think that that's an important lesson to abstract from this. That, you know, the hardness of our geographical borders and some of the ways in which our buildings and our political structures keep us from each other and from communicating with each other. There are ways of finding each other, even in that kind of abstract situation and hostile situation. So I show this in solidarity with the people of Hong Kong. Thank you very much.
グナラン様、どうもありがとうございました。それではこれからパネルディスカッション。
Thank you very much, Mr. Gunalan. We would now like to move to the panel discussion. So can I ask the panelists to please come forward?
Okay. First of all, thank you. Given the time, I have actually one question, but it's 1A and 1B, which are related anyway. My question is that because I was suddenly surprised by the fact that what you have shown and your works are actually already in the past, and we are talking about the future. So my question is, what would you, in the last 30 minutes or so, what would you tell us about what is the future of this art in the city that is possible in, say, next 6, 4, 10 years? Of course, this is not an official pitching for the Olympics, but I think, however, the fact that the Olympics will provide such an immense opportunity for everything, including arts, and also for, as discussed before, as to change the city, not necessarily the physicality of it, but the way we perceive it. And Mr. Perot said yesterday, the kind of new urban mentality. So in this occasion, what would you like to test out in the occasion of Olympics? Since it is 6 years ago, and if you're talking about the future, this is actually some kind of a tangible future that we can talk about. Can I start with Carsten?
Yeah, for me, I see a very big problematic situation. On one hand, we saw in this conference, the city is longing about growing. They're longing as well in order to build infrastructure better, to develop areas, to commercialize areas. And in the same time, I'm get very worried about the art. And obviously there is a kind of contradiction, is a kind of conflict. It means we as artists are very scared of when zones get too commercialized, because we're losing our working and living environment. And gentrification of areas is a very typical situation. It's we all know the situation of areas starting from New York, London. We can this apply to every kind of city almost, where artists move into areas who are rough, and basically by moving into these areas, they're creating a kind of infrastructure, and this infrastructure immediately get picked up, and 10 years later they cannot afford anymore living in that kind of environment. But actually, they started the process of basically urbanizing it or making it attractive. And I think, but I would wish that this kind of contradiction would basically not be existing, that basically we would be not scared of development, that we would not lose spaces, that basically the opportunity of the artist in the city making his living, and I talk about long term, because long term is something what is sustainable. I not talk about single projects, what we might see here. I really talk about the general environment. Yeah.
Well, I remember we talked before that I asked you a question, have you been approached by architects or urban planners about how to incorporate your art into the city? And you said, yeah, but it's always too late. So I think, again, it's not just about the arts, but it's about whether, with the desire for more growth in the city, there will be space left for artists and art. I think this is a very important input for whoever is now planning Tokyo for the next 10 years or so, including how to accommodate the Olympics. Right. Go back to the question. Saito-san, can you say something about it? What would you project into the future in terms of arts in the city?
Well, obviously I'm not talking about like, you know, it's going to be great to have like a bunch of LED in the cities or anything like that. But I see the potential technology installed to the cities that I just want to see, like, if they start sharing the informations, like trains and gas and powers and cars and locations, and well, because I think it becomes like kind of smart city in a way that you know, what architects or a lot of professors been talking about. And then I'm really looking at a lot of things from an entertainment perspective. So I'm just want to see like how we can actually have fun with cities. So so that's why you know, I'm really interested in like how different current systems start cooperating each other, and then it's go back to my question of I mentioned immediate response that like which architecture cannot really do because it's a massive physical structures which cannot really react like at once. But if we install that kind of organic system, I don't know, I mean, I can kind of see the potential that architecture or city itself can be respawned immediately after, I don't know, like what MIT been talking about, like, you know, if people gathering this place, I mean, all the cab taxis are swarming around that because, you know, because there is a business opportunity right there. So that kind of smartness or immediate response or sort of thing might be happening. So that's why I showed the bunch of slides that, like, you know, you can control from your mobile to, I mean, you can control with your mobile and it changed the, you know, the image on, I don't know, big screens or writings or Tokyo Towers and things like that. So the idea is like go connected. So that's, I don't know, kind of I'm really interested in.
Yeah, that sounds to me quite legitimate kind of desire by artists, that you want the city, you want the people to immediately respond to your works or your ideas or the possibilities that you have kind of proposed. Before I go to Gunalan, actually I want to go back to Carsten, because what you have said is good, that the growth of the city should take care of the space for art and artists. I think yesterday we went to this amazing place where an art center is put on the top floor of a building. Top floor of building is oftentimes, or almost actually, always the most expensive space. But beside space, what else, Carsten? Because I haven't heard about you talking about the future of your art, provided that you will get the space. What will you project as the future of your art in the city, or would you like to see?
I think yesterday the urban planners expressed this in a very interesting way, because they've been very skeptical, for instance, about monocultures, like pure business district, pure living district, pure. So the interesting idea was to mix and to have it even in walking distance, to defining mobility different. And we have to understand that art is not in the first place maybe commercializable. It's a value what is very difficult in our society to see, because it's not automatically assigned to any kind of product or consuming. But when we thinking about how we use the city today, and you just go to any place and you think about what is the option, what I can do in this moment in the city without spending money. Where can basically I enjoy something, be with people together. I think in this case art comes inside as well, because there is a great opportunity. Knowledge, art, libraries, museums. But I talk about as well smaller spaces, like little galleries, little studios. I talk about this option to use the street. I talk about public space. I talk about temporarily, like really short little things. And this creates a living atmosphere what is for all of us. I think very important. Yeah, it could create a very good situation, basically.
Thank you, Carsten. Gunalan, the same question. What would you like to see the future of art in the city? And would you care to speculate a little bit about, some suggestions about what Tokyo should do within the opportunity of these Olympics?
Well, so I think that the future is far and the future is near. The future is far because, there are lots of things that are happening today that we don't know how it will unfold, how the economy would be doing, how the environment would survive or not in terms of the way in which we use it. But the future is also near, meaning you can make the future by way of how you are acting on it today. What I try to show with just a small sampling of different trends that I see of artists, especially media artists working in the city, was to suggest a number of things. One, that there is a desire, and you could hear the desire in both these artists. The desire among artists and among people is, well, this city that we inhabit is hard and very often hyper-managed in a way that we probably are not going to enjoy it unless we find ways to manage it differently, to make it do things that we want it to do. And I think that both by way of how we use the city and how we use it with technology or without technology, I think everyday people are becoming creative consumers and creative producers of what the city is and what the city can become. And I think that we need to, and I hope that that will continue. And I hope that the way we will do this, or the way people will do this, is not restricted to just technological devices. Because as I tried to emphasize in my talk on Monday, technology is a tool. It's a way of getting something done. And we need to focus on what do we want our city to become for us. And we need to get that right before we start choosing what the tools need to be. I don't think that, today or we will all be able to exhaust all the different directions that the city is going to take in terms of the arts, and definitely not decide how Tokyo is going to deal with, in the next 6 years, prepare for the Olympics and embrace its position as a city for the arts. But I do hope that it will continue to empower citizens and the public to become active producers of their city. I hope that there would be a greater movement towards participation, involvement of people, more ground-up opportunities for people to participate in what their city becomes. I think that we need to fight for. We need to fight for the opportunity and the right to make important decisions about our city. And that's very important for our creativity.
Thank you, Gunalan. With that note from Mr. Gunalan, we have 3 minutes for the audience if you have burning questions or idea. Are you satisfied with the way Tokyo incorporating arts in your life now? Or would you like to see more? Please, sir. I think he needs a microphone.
I have a question. Thank you very much for your lectures. It was very inspiring. My question is, Tokyo is becoming a very big city. At the same time, digital development is so fast. We are sharing the same information all the time. And like Mr. Carsten art, that's very impressive. That could happen in Hong Kong, could happen in Tokyo, could happen in Paris, probably. In that case, what is the, if you look at the whole world, Tokyo is one of the big cities, but it is a city in Japan, has a culture, and it's international, but at the same time, it's a local city. And as an architect, myself as an architect, I always face the problem of what is the identical culture of Tokyo compared to New York and other cities. Architecture belongs to the place. And, digital technologies is very global, can happen everywhere. Art can happen everywhere in the world, but architecture is bound to the place. In that case, in this meaning, architecture belongs to the place. And therefore, in the huge globalization sort of like age, we need to keep the identity of Japan as a, as a Japanese city. Towards the year 2020, it's very important to make the city of Tokyo very global and one of the big cities in the world. At the same time, it's very important to keep the identity. What is the, in that sense, how do you see the role of art to keep the Tokyo, city of Tokyo, as a city, not one of the city in the world? What do you think the role of the art?
Thank you, sir. Unfortunately, we do not have time for the panelists to answer, but I think you can approach them later for further talks. But I think the question could apply to all of us. I think it's this sort of eternal tension between being global at the same time and at the same time also being local, how to balance that. And I think your question is how arts could play a role in that. With that note, I would like to end this session. Thank you very much. Sorry for not answering your question. Thank you.
マルコ様ありがとうございました。カールステン様、斉藤様、グラナン様、どうもありがとうございました。会場の皆様、今一度スピーカーの皆様に盛大な拍手をお送りください。